The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union fell apart 30 years ago, and now we live in a unipolar world led by the only superpower left standing, the USA. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if somewhere along the line things had played out just a little differently? Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to explore an alternate history where the Cold War never ended. The year is 1991. Mikhail Gorbachev has just died. His successor, a hardliner, has come to power in the Soviet Union, and he wasted no time in purging the Communist Party of the last remaining vestiges of perestroika and glasnost. The Baltic states were crushed with brutal force, and the Warsaw Pact nations brought firmly back into the Soviet sphere. Europe was once again a battleground between communism and capitalism, the United States and the Soviet Union. Over the next few decades, the two superpowers would duke it out, vying for influence around the world. American and Soviet troops would fight proxy wars across the globe from Korea to Vietnam to Afghanistan. And yet, despite all of this, the two superpowers never came into direct military conflict. After all, they both knew that such a war would spell the end of the world as we know it. Mutually assured destruction kept the peace. But as the 21st century dawned, the balance of power began to shift. China, India, and other Asian nations began to flex their growing economic might. By the 2030s, the US and the USSR were no longer the dominant world powers. Instead, the most powerful nation on Earth was the European Union, whose combined GDP dwarfed that of even the United States. America's vast military spending finally began to pay off. By the middle of the century, the U.S. military was far and away the most powerful fighting force on Earth, with NATO having grown to include former Warsaw Pact nations like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. By the late 21st century, the world was a very different place. Western Europe enjoyed a golden age of peace and prosperity. The European Union was a global powerhouse economically and militarily. Eastern Europe was still poor and repressed, but now enjoyed a newfound freedom from Soviet domination. Russia itself had fallen into a sort of Japanese trap, an aging population, stagnant economy, and military that was a shadow of its former self. In the face of this new reality, the U.S. took a more aggressive stance towards the USSR. President Obama initiated a policy of containment towards the stagnating Russian state. Former Soviet republics were encouraged to join NATO and the EU. By the 2050s, the prospect of American and NATO troops marching on Moscow itself seemed all too possible. This aggressive foreign policy was made possible by the rapid development of American nuclear weapons technology. By the middle of the century, the U.S. had deployed sophisticated new hypersonic missiles that could strike anywhere in Russia within minutes. This dramatically altered the strategic calculus of mutually assured destruction, which up until this point had prevented the two superpowers from engaging in open warfare. Now the U.S. could strike deep into Russia and be out of range of any meaningful retaliatory strike. Russia's options were limited. They could accept their new second-class status in a post-Cold War world order, or they could strike preemptively. And so it began. In October 2067, a Russian strike force launched a barrage of missiles at various American targets across Europe. Major cities were wiped off the map. Washington, D.C., London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, Madrid, all ceased to exist. Doomsday scenarios predicted for decades became reality. The temperature of the Earth's core increased by several degrees as hundreds of nuclear warheads detonated over major population centers. Cities turned into radioactive wastelands, and the stock market into a doomsday clock counting down the final seconds of human civilization. After the dust settled, Russia and America emerged as the only two superpowers left standing. Both nations were now ruled by military juntas, and both possessed weapons of mass destruction. A new Cold War had begun. So there you have it, a world where the Cold War never ended. It may seem far-fetched, but it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. After all, we only have to look to the recent past to see how close we came to this sort of future. In 1983, the Soviet early warning system reported an imminent launch of American nuclear missiles. This false alarm nearly triggered a Soviet first strike. Had the hardline Soviet leadership chosen to strike first, it is likely that America would have retaliated, thus sparking the very apocalypse scenario we see in this timeline. What do you think? Could a new Cold War emerge in the 22nd century? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.